evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Ask Leah. As much as I entertained you last week with my children dancing in the background, fingers crossed they stay out of the room tonight, although something makes me suspect that you hope they do come in. I've just finished reading them Harry Potter in the bath, and hopefully that will keep them entertained. Speaking of Harry Potter, I know there's a lot of fans out there. I actually missed the whole Harry Potter thing. I was in my early 20s when Harry Potter came out, and I didn't read them at the time, and I'm a voracious reader, but I've got to say I'm so glad I didn't, because now I have the absolute joy of reading them with my kids. I come to you tonight after 2 nights away in Melbourne. I've been facilitating a board strategic planning day over the last couple of days, doing preparation for that and facilitating the entire day yesterday, and I am now back home. Now, tonight's question has to do with a promotional opportunity that a friend of mine's facing, and I had a conversation with him today actually about this opportunity. Now, he works for an organisation, has worked there for quite a while, and he's a gun employee. He, is often doing hired duties even without being paid for them. And in his role, his team has actually been without a manager for a few months now. So he's sort of been stepping up unofficially. And unfortunately, in this role, the last 3 or 4 managers have actually left quickly. It's a high pressure role. So there's been a high turnover of managers. I think one of them only lasted a few weeks and then went, bugger this is too much. And left. And so this position's vacant. It's coming up next year. And this friend of mine is considering applying for it. And the question he asked me was around the conversation he has with the big bosses for his organisation. He was saying, I need to ask about how much money I will get paid to do this manager job, whether it's higher duties or I actually apply for this manager role. The question I need to ask is, how much will I get paid? Now, absolutely, how much will I get paid to do the managerial job forms part of the conversation, but it is not the be all and end all. You see, what you get paid is part of it, but there's more than that. So, and here comes a child. So he also needs to answer, if he takes on this job and does it, right? So for the record, this would be the one that wasn't in the video last week. All right, enough, and you're done. Okay.
And check out the Hogwarts Library if you want. Okay. It's amazing.
Okay, shut the door on your way out. Okay. So it was more than money. He also needs to ask some other questions, and I want to share them with you tonight, because I think so often when we get in conversations about potential promotions, we forget that it's a two-way conversation. So the minute he told me that so many of the previous bosses had left quickly or in not great circumstances because they'd been overstressed, overworked, and it hadn't done wonders for their mental and physical health, I said to him, righto, if you take this job opportunity, another question that you need to ask is, if I do this manager role, what do I drop from my current role? So what drops off? Because here's the thing, we only have a set number of hours in the day, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you do, we can't change time. So great to get paid more for doing higher duties. But if that means he has to do all of those managerial duties on top of his current role, which we suspect may be the expectation, really, it doesn't matter, how much they pay you if you have no life because you can't do anything else, then that's not going to work. So really the questions become, what can I drop off? how are you going to set me up for success? And I would raise, okay, so this is what's happened the last 3 or 4 times with previous managers. How are we going to set things up differently so that when I step into the role, I am set up for success? Essentially, yes, you are raising, this is how I can help you. These are all the things I can bring to the table if I take on this role. But don't forget to ask them, and what are you going to give me? The money, great, I'll be paid to do the manager role. But how are you going to equip me and empower me for success? What can I drop off, and what are we going to do with this situation? Again, it is awesome to be offered a job in any situation. When we apply and we're hell-bent on getting a job, it's wonderful. But in our excitement, quite often we are super eager and we say yes, and we don't negotiate. We don't have these conversations. So you need to know what you want beforehand and have that conversation. Now, the other thing I did today was attend the funeral of the dad of a dear friend. And I just wanted to talk about something briefly that I've spoken about before, but I just want to reiterate it tonight. There's no right thing to say when someone passes away. However, and I've spoken to a lot of friends who have had this experience, whether it's parents or siblings. And unfortunately, one thing that often happens is people avoid them. They avoid them because they don't know what to say. They're overwhelmed themselves. They don't want to say the wrong thing. So they avoid the person entirely. And from my friends that I've spoken to about this, they have all said, you know what, it's the worst thing. You're already dealing with that immense grief. Of course, you don't want to be overwhelmed. You don't want people invading your privacy. But, I've heard examples of people crossing the street to avoid you because they don't know how to have that conversation. And this is something that comes up a lot. Any of you who have read Lee Sales' fabulous book, Any Ordinary Day, will have read the story with Walter Mikac, who, of course, lost his 2 daughters and wife in the Port Arthur massacre. And he actually tells the story of a friend walking towards him on the footpath and then seeing him, realising that it was him, and turning and walking away. And Walter Mikac actually followed him to try to catch up with him. And the friend got so panicked, he actually ended up running down the footpath away from Walter Mikac. And Walter Mikac chased him in the end in this ridiculous situation. Here's the thing. There is no right thing to say when someone dies, when someone loses a loved one. But you can say that. You can contact them and say, I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. That is better than running away, than crossing the road, and then avoiding the conversation. You don't have to know what to say, but please say something. I'm thinking of you. I love you. I am here for you. And say something. And then I encourage you to do something as well, because saying to someone who's just lost someone, just let me know what you need. They don't know what they need. They're overwhelmed. So if you can help, if you can mow lawns, if you can drop off some food, it's these little things. But again, death sucks, but it is part of life. And we need to front up in the difficult times as well as the great. So I know that's a hard topic to cover, but I think it's so, so important because we're all there at some point in our lives. That is it from me tonight. I hope you have a fabulous week. I am so looking forward to the weekend. This is a crazy week for me. I've been away for 2 nights. I'm home for 2 nights, and then I am away for 3 nights. This weekend, I am heading off to the Queenscliff Music Festival. I am glamping with a couple of mates, and I cannot wait because I do really need that break. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. If you have a question, please send it through. I love answering your questions, and I look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of Ask Leah. Cheers, everyone. Have a great night.